AMR describes a situation where medicines that were previously effective for the treatment of these common conditions are no longer effective either at those concentrations or are totally not working for treatment of that condition. This describes a resistance towards either antibiotics, where we define it as antibiotic resistance, when we have resistance towards antivirals, which are medicines for treating viral infections, where we call these antiviral resistance, and then also resistance towards antifungals. These are medicines for treating fungal infections.
Think about the antibiotics, think about environmental pollution. Yeah, normally what happens is like we might have the medicines which are expired and we don't know how to dispose them. Sometimes we can give them to the livestock. We can spray on them. We can even go to have large-scale poultry farming. And once you do the application on this, there's usually some remnant that actually find themselves into the environment. Like you can even come through like a water runoff. Like in our houses, we can just wash this thing through the sink. And all this, in a very simple word, contributes to environmental pollution.
My AMR journey began in November 2020. I went a right hip replacement surgery, and it was soon afterwards complicated by a hospital-acquired infection, which was life-threatening. And later on, that infection got into my blood system, and it failed to respond to all the antibiotics that were being used. And this led to further complications, almost causing kidney failure. Then I also got infected with COVID in hospital during that time. And so it was a very, very difficult time because antibiotics were no longer working. And when I went home, we did a culture and sensitivity testing that we were able to determine what was causing the problem. And out of 18 antibiotics, only one antibiotic was working. And when we administered that antibiotic, sometimes in August of 2021, is when I started recuperating.
I have 2 children. The first one came with jaundice. All that developed into several other issues that we had to deal with subsequently. He had adenoids, and go to the hospital. They only advised us to manage it with antibiotics until probably when we are ready to do a surgery. We used augmentin. At some point, it wasn't working anymore. We went to Zinat. We went to several of those antibiotics. Those were literally experiences that we had managing the case of the adenoids with him. And we got tired and we just had to do a surgery for him.
So if you think about it, stewardship is about taking care of resources that you have so that it's available for you to use for a long time. It means we're using these drugs in such a way that we do not promote resistance, hence we're able to use these drugs for a long time. When we think about the history of antibiotics, for example, there are antibiotics that were developed many years ago, but because we overused them, organisms like bacteria became resistant to those drugs, so we can no longer use them because they will not treat the infections that we intend to treat. So when we talk about stewardship, it's the whole process of thinking about how do I ensure that the antibiotics that are available now will continue to be available for a long time.
As much as possible, being able to separate a viral from a bacterial infection is so critical, and being a restraint in prescribing antibiotic is just the way to go.
Ways that the members of the public can be able to reduce the spread of resistance. One is through appropriate use of antimicrobials or medicines. When we do self-medication, when it is not recommended, when we store these medicines inappropriately, it means that the quality is not assured. When we share medications with others for conditions that we may think are similar but probably are not clearly indicated.
Awareness is actually one of the strategies within the National Action Plan. Like, when we have poultry, after vaccination, do I need to sell the chicken immediately to the market? Because you'll be exposing the people the same. I know there's the challenge about livelihood. I don't have to use sewage water for growing vegetable. Sometimes you can apply chemicals on a manure. I don't have to use the same manure on the farm, because when I take it to the farm, it rains and it will get into the water. So that's what you're working for. The environmental sector is to let people understand that, of course, you also need to look at how to build capacity, and also need to see how we can work together as all stakeholders, and not forgetting the community, who bears the burden. Because I know I'm also a community person. When I leave my office, I also become a community. I also I generate waste, I generate wastewater, and then I have to make sure this water is handled well.
In terms of healthcare workers, I think one of the areas we've struggled is that antibiotics are freely sold in pharmacies without a prescription. In the ideal situation, if someone has a bacterial infection, they should get a prescription from a doctor and they can use that to buy antibiotics. So I guess the issue would be to have those running pharmacies not to sell antibiotics to anyone who does not have a prescription. And it also helps us to know when there's emerging resistance to an antibiotic, so that if we note that everything we're growing in the hospital is no longer responding to this antibiotic, then it means, one, it points to overuse of that antibiotic within the hospital, but it also tells us that we need to start thinking of other options for treatment of those infections.